Hey boys and girls, Miss Minor here. We are going to do a little experimenting today with some watercolor techniques. So you're gonna have to get out your watercolor set if you have one. If you don't, you can always mix food coloring with a little bit of water to make a paint. All right, let's get started with those experiments. Okay, so for today's watercolor experimentations, you are gonna need some heavier paper. Okay, I happen to have watercolor. I know most people are not going to have that, but if you have a heavier paper, that would be great. You are going to need a white crayon. You are going to need some salt in a cup. You are going to need some saran wrap, some plastic wrap. And of course, watercolor paint and some brushes with a cup of water. Also, protect your surface. I know I always forget to say this, but protect your surface. I've got a white piece of paper here. All right, so for our first experiment, we are going to take this white crayon, and I know what you're thinking, white on white, we're not gonna see anything. So, you can do some nice lines on your paper. You may be able to kind of see the difference in texture on your paper. Now, once you have done that, you are going to dip your brush in the water. And I always, see, I'm gonna use my bottom level here. Okay, water. And you bring it over to your paint. Swirl it around a little bit. And start painting, and your line will reveal itself. I'm going to use a couple of different colors here. And you see when you use one color really close to another, it kind of mixes. The key to watercolor is lots of water. Okay. Should be a little translucent. It's like bleeding very nicely into the next color. Okay, so that was experiment number 1. So once you've got that finished, you can set that aside to dry. And you're gonna take another piece of paper. Now for this one, we gotta keep it really wet and work kind of quickly. So I'm gonna put a bunch of water on to my paints so I can kind of work quickly here. And this one, you are gonna use the saran wrap, so make sure that's handy before you start. All right, so I'm gonna start with my lightest color, and I'm just gonna put it, make sure it stays really wet in a few areas on my paper. I'm gonna get this next color, put it in a few areas. It's okay if it bleeds onto another spot. And finally, I'm gonna take that red. I gotta work quickly because you cannot let this dry, otherwise you won't get the cool effects. I can see that it's gonna be close. might even have to put some more of this color down. All right, while it's still wet, you are gonna take your saran wrap and you are gonna put it all over top of your picture and smush. You're gonna let it sit for a few minutes. And you wanna have these air bubbles. That's what's gonna give it an interesting look, an interesting texture. All right, I'm just gonna set this aside for a minute or two to dry a little bit. All right, now I'm gonna take my final piece of paper. And again, you're gonna have to keep this pretty wet. I'm gonna change out my water too. Okay, so for this one, what I'm gonna do so I can keep it nice and wet is I'm just gonna give a quick wash of water over my entire paper. Keeping it really, really nice and wet. And I'm gonna put lots of water on the colors I'm gonna use. And it doesn't have to be anything specific. You're just filling the paper with some color. You want to have a bunch of colors next to each other to give it the interesting look that we are going for here. All right, so as soon as you're done covering it, you are going to sprinkle the salt crystals over top of your paper. All right. And again, you must let this dry for a while. Okay, boys and girls, so here are our finished paintings. This is with the white crayon and paint. This one is with our saran wrap. It really gives it a nice texture. I would leave the saran wrap on until it dries and then peel it off. And my favorite, this is the one with the salt that we put on it. After the salt dries, you're gonna wanna brush it off your paper, but the texture will still be there. So now you're saying, I have these 3 paintings, what do I do? What I would like is for you to practice your cutting skills, chop them all up into little pieces, big pieces, whatever size, glue them back down and make a new picture. As long as you are practicing cutting. Just the papers, nothing else. All right, boys and girls, have fun with that second part. Use your imagination, be creative, and of course, snap a picture, send it to me in Dojo so I can see what you're up to. All right, talk to you soon.